If you walk into a grocery store during a supply chain crisis, the first section to go empty is always the same. It is not the canned beans, and it is not the toilet paper. It is the fresh protein, and specifically, the eggs. We have built a food system that relies entirely on a just-in-time delivery chain, a complex dance that moves fragile, perishable items halfway across the continent in a constant stream of refrigerated trucks. If those trucks stop moving for just 3 days, you do not have eggs. And if you're trying to build a survival pantry, a pantry that offers true security, you have likely realized the frustrating paradox of the egg. You cannot stockpile them when they're fresh. Sure, you can freeze them, but that ties you to a constant need for electricity. You can dehydrate them into a sad, yellow powder that tastes like chalk and has the texture of dust. Or you can pickle them, submerging them in vinegar until they become rubbery, sour caricatures of their former selves. But what if I told you that in the late 19th century, long before the invention of the electric refrigerator, households across the world kept fresh, raw eggs in their pantries for up to 2 years? They didn't freeze them, and they didn't cook them. They simply put them in a bucket of liquid. And when they pulled an egg out of that bucket 18 months later, cracked it into a hot skillet and fried it, it looked, smelled, and tasted exactly like it had been laid that very morning. This method is called water glassing. It is the lost art of using simple chemistry to pause time. And unlike canning, which requires high heat and pressure, or freezing, which needs constant power, water glassing requires almost nothing, just a bucket, a specific mineral solution, and a dark corner of your basement. To understand how this nearly magical process works, we first have to understand the biology of an egg, and more importantly, why the modern grocery store eggs we buy are actually broken by design. When a hen lays an egg, nature provides it with a perfect, microscopic protective coating. It's called the bloom or the cuticle. This invisible shield seals the thousands of tiny pores that cover the surface of the eggshell. The bloom's job is twofold: to prevent harmful bacteria from getting inside the egg, and to prevent the moisture inside the egg from evaporating out. In Europe, they understand this. They leave the bloom intact, which is why you'll often see cartons of eggs sitting on a regular shelf at room temperature in a grocery store in France or Germany. But in North America, our industrial food system is obsessed with aesthetics. We demand that our eggs look sterile, so we wash them. We scrub them with hot water and chlorine to make them look bright white and perfectly clean. This washing process scrubs off the bloom completely. It strips away the egg's natural protection, leaving all those thousands of pores wide open. This is precisely why American eggs must be refrigerated immediately. If you leave a washed grocery store egg on the counter, bacteria will march right through that porous shell, and the egg will rot in a matter of days. And this brings us to the most critical and unbreakable rule of water glassing. You cannot use store-bought eggs. You must use fresh, unwashed eggs with the bloom perfectly intact. If you try this method with a washed egg, you will not preserve it. You will create a bucket of sulfur gas so potent it will haunt your nightmares. So, assuming you have access to a local farmer or your own backyard flock of chickens, how did the Victorians keep these unwashed eggs fresh for 2 entire years? They used a compound called sodium silicate. Back in the 1800s, sodium silicate was known by a more common name, water glass. It's a chemical compound that looks like water but feels thick and syrupy to the touch. When you mix it with water, it creates a highly alkaline environment, a solution with a high pH. Bacteria simply cannot survive in high alkalinity. But the sodium silicate does something else, something much more incredible. It interacts with the calcium carbonate in the eggshell itself. It chemically bonds to the shell and forms a glass-like seal over every single pore. It's essentially a liquid cork. It creates a hermetic seal that is even stronger and more complete than the natural bloom. No air can get in, no moisture can get out. The egg is suspended in time. Here is the step-by-step method used in 1896, which is still the gold standard today. First, you need a vessel. The pioneers used heavy stoneware crocks. Today, a food-grade plastic bucket with a tight-fitting lid works perfectly. It just has to be clean. Second, you prepare your solution. You mix 1 part sodium silicate to 10 parts boiled and cooled water. You boil the water first to kill any pathogens that might be in your tap water, then you must let it cool completely to room temperature. This is a test of patience. If you put raw eggs into hot water, you'll just end up with a bucket of boiled eggs. Once your solution is mixed and cool, you gently place your clean, unwashed eggs into the bucket. You want to place them pointy side down. The reason for this is that the air sac inside the egg is located at the wide end. Keeping that air sac at the top helps keep the yolk perfectly centered and prevents it from eventually sticking to the side of the shell. You continue stacking the eggs gently until the bucket is nearly full, and then you pour the water glass solution over them. You want to make sure the eggs are covered by at least 2 inches of the liquid. This liquid barrier prevents evaporation and keeps the chemical seal on the eggs intact. You put the lid on, and you walk away. That's it. There is no boiling, no pressure canning, no electricity. You just store the bucket in a cool, dark place, like a root cellar or a forgotten closet in the basement. Then, 6 months later, in the dead of winter when the hens have stopped laying because of the short days and lack of sunlight, you can go to your bucket, you open the lid, reach into the cold, syrupy liquid, and pull out an egg. You rinse off the excess solution under the tap, and when you crack it open, the yolk will stand up tall and firm. The white will be clear and viscous. It is, for all intents and purposes, a perfectly fresh egg. Now, sodium silicate can be a little hard to track down at the local hardware store these days, but there is a pioneer alternative that is cheaper, easier to find, and almost as effective. It's called lime water. And I'm not talking about the fruit, I'm talking about hydrated lime, which is also known as calcium hydroxide or simply pickling lime. You can find large bags of this white powder in the canning section of most hardware or farm supply shops. It's the same stuff used to make pickles crisp or to make mortar for bricklaying. Lime water works on the exact same principle, high alkalinity. You mix 1 ounce by weight of hydrated lime to 1 quart of water. You stir it vigorously. The lime will not fully dissolve. It creates a milky white suspension, and eventually the excess powder will settle to the bottom. This is not only normal, it's what you want. You want that saturated solution. You pour this milky water over your unwashed eggs just like you would with the sodium silicate. The lime water creates a high pH environment that sterilizes the shell and prevents bacterial growth. It also has a neat trick. It reacts with the carbon dioxide in the air to form a thin crust of calcium carbonate on the surface of the water, which helps to seal the bucket. While sodium silicate is the superior true glassing method that can last a full 2 years, the lime water method will reliably keep eggs fresh for 12 to 18 months. But we do need to talk about the reality of eating an egg that's been sitting in a bucket for over a year. While it is perfectly safe, the texture does change slightly over time. As an egg sits in the solution, the proteins in the egg white slowly begin to break down and lose some of their structure. The white becomes thinner, more watery. If you try to fry a year-old glassed egg sunny side up, the white might spread out across the pan rather than staying in a tight little circle. For this reason, most people prefer to use their older glassed eggs for baking, for scrambling, or for omelets. In a cake batter or a scramble, you absolutely cannot tell the difference between a glassed egg and one laid this morning. There is also a physical quirk you must remember if you want to boil them. Because the process seals the pores of the shell so perfectly, the egg shell is no longer breathable. If you drop a cold glassed egg directly into boiling water, the internal pressure will build up, the steam won't be able to escape, and the egg will literally explode. To hard-boil a glassed egg, you must first prick a tiny hole in the shell with a pin. This gives the pressure a way to escape. Safety is the final and most important point. How do you know if the method failed? The beauty of nature is that a rotten egg is not subtle. The human nose is exquisitely evolved to detect sulfur. If a glassed egg has gone bad, you will know it the second you crack the shell. The smell will be horrific. If it smells like an egg, it is good. If it smells like a chemical weapon, throw it away. There is also the float test. As an egg ages, its internal air pocket gets bigger. If you take an egg out of the solution and place it in a bowl of fresh water, it should sink to the bottom. If it floats, it means gas has built up inside the egg, likely from decomposition.
If it floats, do not eat it. This technique was not a hobby for our ancestors. It was a survival necessity. Chickens operate on a solar cycle. When the days get short in winter, their pituitary glands tell them to stop laying eggs to conserve energy. Back in the 1800s, if you didn't preserve the abundance of spring and summer, you simply didn't have protein in January. We have forgotten this cycle. We have forgotten this rhythm because we use artificial lights in massive commercial chicken coops to trick the birds into laying year-round until they die of exhaustion. We have disconnected ourselves from the seasons. Water glassing is more than just a prepping trick. It is a way to reclaim independence from the profound fragility of the industrial food chain. It allows you to buy local, high-quality food during the season of abundance and feed your family well during the season of scarcity.